I am Emily Edwards. I've always felt like a shadow in my family's dazzling world. My parents and sisters, Sophia, Lillian, and Grace, were the celebrated stars of the Edwards name, their beauty and success lighting up every room, while I was just the quiet one, ignored and pushed aside. At the gala, I thought I'd be stuck as their errand girl, swallowing their cruel words and the crowd's judgment. But then, a man I never thought knew me stepped forward and changed everything. Before we dive into today's story, we would like to thank you for joining us on Title Afterglow. Your support means the world, so please like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with our gripping tales of justice and triumph. Now, let's jump into the story. The New York evening was a symphony of light and sound, the city's towering skyscrapers shimmering like a constellation of ambition against the velvet sky. Tonight, the Royal Bell Hotel, a monument of opulence and prestige, stood at the heart of the city's fervor, its golden facade bathed in spotlights. The grand ball unfolding within its walls was a celebration of the nation's most influential women, titans of business, fashion, art, and philanthropy. It was a night where the elite converged to display their power, their beauty, and their carefully curated perfection. Among the invited was the Edwards family, a dynasty synonymous with wealth, charm, and an impeccable public image. Margaret Edwards, a retired lawyer whose razor-sharp intellect had once dominated courtrooms, was a formidable matriarch, her presence both commanding and intimidating. Her husband, Thomas Edwards, a former judge, carried an air of stern authority, his judgments as unyielding in family matters as they'd been on the bench. Years ago, unable to have children of their own, they'd adopted a little girl named Emily. I was that girl, quiet, sweet, and desperate to please. In those early years, they'd showered me with love, their first daughter, promising me a future as bright as the city itself. But when they adopted 3 more girls, Sophia, Lillian, and Grace, everything changed. I became the shadow, the unwanted one, the daughter they tolerated but never celebrated. My sisters were the radiant stars of the Edwards constellation, each a beacon of success in her own right. Sophia, the eldest, was a Hollywood actress whose luminous beauty and Oscar-worthy performances dominated tabloids, red carpets, and movie screens worldwide. Her laughter was a melody, her charisma a magnet that drew adoration from fans and critics alike. Lillian, the second, was a high-fashion model, her lithe figure gracing the runways of Paris, Milan, and London, her face a staple in Vogue, Elle, and Harper's Bazaar. Her poise was effortless, her elegance a currency in the world of haute couture. Grace, the youngest, was a fashion designer whose avant-garde brand had editors, influencers, and celebrities clamoring for her creations, her sketches transforming into wearable art that defined trends. And then there was me, Emily Edwards, the plain one, the quiet one, the one who didn't belong. I had no fame, no fans, no glittering accolades, just a modest one-bedroom apartment in a quiet corner of Manhattan and a job at Bexley Group, the country's most successful company, a titan in urban planning, healthcare, and sustainable technology. To my family, my job was a triviality, a mark of my ordinariness, a reminder that I'd never measure up to their dazzling legacy. Tonight, I had to attend the ball, not because they wanted me there, but because their meticulously crafted image demanded it. It would look strange if one daughter was missing. My mother had said days earlier, her voice clipped as she adjusted her diamond-encrusted necklace in the mirror of the Edwards mansion, a sprawling estate in the Upper East Side. My sisters had other plans for me, their demands as sharp as their beauty. "You'll help us get ready," Grace had ordered, tossing her golden curls with a smirk, her eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of command. The mansion was a hive of activity, maids polishing silver, stylists steaming gowns, a florist arranging orchids for the family's entrance. Yet I was the one they summoned, their personal errand girl, a role I'd played since childhood, when their affection turned to indifference. I spent hours in a whirlwind of their demands, my feet aching, my heart heavy. I fetched Sophia's emerald gown from its silk-lined box, holding it up as she critiqued her reflection in a floor-length mirror, her eyes narrowing at every imagined flaw. Not that one, Emily, she snapped when I accidentally brought a jade dress instead, her voice slicing through the room. I stood patiently as Lillian sculpted her hair into perfect waves, passing her pins, sprays, and mirrors, my arms trembling from holding them steady for nearly an hour. Don't drop it, she warned, her tone cold, as if I were a clumsy servant rather than her sister. I ran upstairs for Grace's silver heels, nearly tripping on the grand staircase in my haste, only to be met with her sneer when I returned. You're so slow, she said, snatching the shoes from my hands, her manicured nails glinting under the chandelier's light. The mansion buzzed with preparation, a symphony of luxury and expectation. Maids dusted crystal vases, assistants coordinated with photographers, and a string quartet rehearsed in the conservatory for the family's pre-ball photos. Yet I was the one they treated like the help, their demands relentless, their gratitude non-existent. My mother oversaw it all like a general, her voice sharp as she issued orders, while my father sat in his study, reviewing legal briefs, detached from the chaos, but ever present in his disapproval. I caught glimpses of myself in the mansion's mirrors, frazzled, my dark hair frizzing, my plain blouse and skirt a stark contrast to my sister's glamour, and felt the familiar sting of invisibility. By the time they were ready, I was a wreck, sweaty, my hair a tangled mess, my hands shaking from exhaustion. I stood in the grand foyer, catching my breath as they prepared to leave. Sophia wrinkled her nose, her voice dripping with disdain. You smell, Emily. Honestly, you're a mess. You'll have to follow later, Grace added, her smirk sharp enough to cut. We can't be seen arriving with you like this. It'd ruin our entrance. My parents barely glanced at me, their attention fixed on their radiant daughters. Don't be late, my father warned, his tone cold and final, his eyes narrowing as if daring me to disappoint them. And if anyone asks why you're not in the spotlight, say you're private. Say you're proud of your sisters. Don't embarrass us. They swept out of the mansion in a black limousine, their laughter echoing like a taunt as the car pulled away, its taillights disappearing into the night. I stood alone, the marble foyer swallowing me in its silence, the grandeur of the house mocking my smallness. My chest tightened, a familiar ache spreading through me, an ache I'd carried since I was 8, when Sophia arrived and my parents' love began to shift, when Lillian and Grace followed, and I was pushed further into the shadows. I wanted to scream, to tell them I didn't care about their perfect image, that I was tired of being their prop, their punching bag. But I didn't. I never did. It was easier to stay quiet, to let them shine while I faded into obscurity, to bury my pain under layers of duty and silence. I retreated to the guest bathroom, splashing cold water on my face, trying to steady my breathing. My reflection in the mirror was a stranger, pale, tired, with dark circles under my hazel eyes. I saw the girl I'd once been, the one who'd believed her parents' promises, who dreamed of a family that loved her equally. That girl was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned to survive by being invisible. I cleaned myself up as best I could, tying my dark hair into a neat bun and slipping into a simple black dress I'd bought at a thrift shop. It was sleeveless, with a modest neckline and a hem that brushed my knees, unremarkable but elegant in its simplicity, paid for with my own money, a quiet act of defiance against my family's wealth. I applied minimal makeup, just enough to hide my exhaustion, and called a cab, my stomach twisting with dread. I didn't belong in their world of sparkle and power, and I knew it. But I had no choice. The Royal Bell Hotel was a vision of grandeur, its red carpet flanked by velvet ropes, its golden entrance bathed in the glow of chandeliers visible through towering windows. Paparazzi lined the barriers, their cameras flashing like lightning, capturing the elite as they arrived, women in shimmering gowns, men in bespoke tuxedos, their smiles practiced and perfect. Guards in crisp uniforms stood at the entrance, checking invitations with military precision. I stepped out of the cab, my hands clammy, my heart pounding. The air was thick with perfume and anticipation, the crowd's chatter a hum that drowned out my thoughts. I felt like an imposter, my plain dress a stark contrast to the glittering sea around me. I approached the entrance, my steps hesitant, and spoke to the guard, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm with the Edwards family. His eyes raked over me, lingering on my dress, my lack of jewelry, my unpolished appearance. He shook his head, his expression dismissive. No invitation, no entry. I tried to explain, my words stumbling over each other. My family's already inside. I'm Emily Edwards. Please check the list. He didn't budge, his gaze cold. Step aside, miss. You're holding up the line. People behind me whispered, some chuckling softly, their amusement a knife in my chest. My cheeks burned, tears stinging my eyes. I turned to leave, my heart heavy, telling myself it was better this way. I could go home, curl up in my tiny apartment, and forget this humiliating night. I'd tell my parents I'd been sick, that I'd try to come but couldn't. They'd scold me, but it would be better than this public shame. But then, a strong arm linked with mine, warm and steady, stopping me in my tracks. I froze, my breath catching as I looked up. My heart stopped. Ethan Blake, the CEO of Bexley Group. My boss. The youngest billionaire in the country, with sharp cheekbones, dark hair that fell perfectly over his forehead, and eyes like a storm at sea, deep blue and piercing. He was impossibly handsome, his tailored black tuxedo accentuating his tall, lean frame, his presence commanding, his deep voice of force that silenced rooms. I'd seen him in boardrooms, his authority effortless, his decisions shaping global markets. But he'd never spoken to me directly. I was a mid-level employee, invisible even at work, one of hundreds who kept Bexley's machine running smoothly. Yet here he was, his arm linked with mine, his gaze steady and calm. "The lady is with me," he said to the guards, his tone firm, leaving no room for argument. They stepped aside instantly, their faces paling, their apologies stumbling over each other. Cameras flashed, a frenzy of light and sound, heads turning, whispers erupting like wildfire. Ethan Blake, who'd never been seen with a woman on his arm, who avoided the spotlight as deftly as he navigated corporate battles, was walking into the ball with me, plain, insignificant Emily Edwards. My heart pounded, my skin tingling with panic. Why was he doing this? Did he know who I was? That's impossible. There are thousands of employees in the company. Was this a mistake? As we crossed into the golden-lit ballroom, the chandeliers casting a warm glow over marble floors and velvet-draped tables, I slipped my arm from his, my hands trembling. "Thank you for helping me, sir," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the murmur of the crowd. I turned to flee, my head bowed, desperate to escape before I embarrassed him further. Being seen with me could ruin his image, tarnish the untouchable aura that surrounded him. I couldn't bear to be the cause of that, not when I was already drowning in my family's disdain. I didn't want to sit with my family, but I had nowhere else to go. The ballroom was a sea of elegance, women in gowns that sparkled like starlight, men in tuxedos that cost more than my yearly rent, their laughter bold and crystalline. I felt like an intruder, my plain dress a shadow among their brilliance. I slipped into a chair at my family's table, keeping my head down, hoping to disappear into the background. Sophia barely glanced at me, sipping her champagne with a grace that turned heads. "You're late," she said loudly, her voice carrying, drawing eyes to our table. "Honestly, Emily, you're such an embarrassment." "She didn't even have to show up," Lillian muttered, her voice sharp, her eyes flicking over me with disdain. "You're lucky we let you be here." Grace smirked, her gaze raking over my dress. "Did you really think that was a good idea? You're such a plain Jane, Emily. Zero fashion sense." I bit my lip, saying nothing, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Their words were knives, slicing through the fragile armor I'd built over years of their cruelty. I'd learned to endure their cuts, to swallow my pain, to let their barbs roll off me like water. I wanted to run, to hide, but I stayed, my heart sinking deeper with every passing moment. The lights dimmed, and the host took the stage, a charismatic woman in a silver gown whose voice filled the room with warmth. She welcomed everyone to the annual ball, a celebration of innovative women who'd shaped the nation's future, leaders in health, education, business, entertainment, and charity. The screens behind her lit up, and the videos began, starting with the oldest honoree and moving to the youngest. They played pre-recorded videos of them explaining their various accomplishments and briefly giving a rundown of their productive work, plus a little bit about themselves. I watched as each woman shared her story: scientists who'd revolutionized medicine, entrepreneurs who'd built empires, artists who'd redefined culture. Their voices were confident, their achievements monumental, their presence commanding. Then came my sisters. Sophia's video was a montage of her award-winning films, her beauty radiant on the screen, her dramatic scenes earning gasps from the crowd. Guests murmured in awe, their eyes flicking to our table, their whispers filled with praise. Lillian's video followed, showing her strutting down runways in Paris and Milan, her voice smooth as silk as she spoke of beauty, fashion, and empowerment. The room applauded, her elegance a magnet for admiration. Grace's video was last, filled with sketches and fabrics, her story of building a fashion empire from a single sewing machine earning cheers and applause. She stood to accept her award, her smile dazzling, her gown a masterpiece of her own design. With each video, my family sat taller, their pride glowing like the chandeliers above. Cameras flashed as my sisters stood to accept their awards, the room erupting in applause. My parents beamed, their smiles wide, their hands clasped in a rare display of unity. For them, this was the pinnacle of their legacy, 3 daughters honored at once, the perfect family, enshrined in the spotlight. People whispered the phrase, their voices carrying across the room, a title my family had cultivated for years through charity galas, media interviews, and carefully staged photo ops. I slipped away before Grace's video ended, my heart aching. I wasn't jealous. I'd never craved their fame or their spotlight, but their triumph always came with a reminder of my place, the forgotten one, the shadow trailing behind their brilliance. I found a quiet corner near the lounge, where the lights were dim and the cameras couldn't reach. I sat alone, staring at the marble floor, my fingers twisting the hem of my dress. I just wanted to survive this night, to go home and hide under my blanket, to forget the sting of their words and the weight of their expectations. But fate had other plans. A group of women approached, their heels clicking like a warning on the polished floor. I recognized them instantly. Vivian, Claire, and Madison, my sister's friends since childhood, a trio of beauty and cruelty who'd tormented me for as long as I could remember. They were stunning. Vivian with her auburn hair cascading in waves, Claire with her platinum blonde bob and sharp cheekbones, Madison with her dark curls and cat-like eyes. They were wealthy, connected, and always laughing, their voices a chorus of privilege. But beneath their polished exteriors was a venom I knew too well. Every family event, every party, they'd found a way to humiliate me, their polite smiles hiding barbs that cut deeper than any knife. Emily, Vivian said, her voice dripping with fake surprise as she stopped before me. Oh my God, it's really you. I didn't see you earlier. You've changed a little. Claire chuckled, her laugh sharp and mocking. Yeah, you look so quiet and miserable. Like always. Madison leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming, her tone sugary. Still working at that, what was it again? That office place? God. How do you stand it? I forced a small smile, my voice trapped in my throat, my nod automatic. They sat across from me, their legs crossed, their gowns shimmering under the soft light. Their smiles were sharp, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. I knew what was coming, a performance they'd perfected over years, a ritual of cruelty disguised as kindness. They'd start with quiet insults, their voices low enough to avoid notice, then escalate until my sisters swooped in to defend me, painting themselves as loving while keeping me small. It was a script I knew by heart, one that left me bruised and silent every time. They dragged me to a more visible table, insisting I join them, their hands firm on my arms. We can't let you hide all night, Vivian said, her smile tight. I wanted to resist, to pull away and flee, but I knew better. If I made a scene, they'd twist it against me, and my parents would punish me later. More errands, more insults, more nights locked out of family dinners. So I sat, my hands folded in my lap, bracing for the storm. Vivian leaned forward, her voice low and mocking. So, Emily, tell us, do you ever get tired of being, well, you? I mean, with sisters like Sophia, Lillian, and Grace, it must be exhausting. Claire giggled, sipping her champagne. I'd die if I had to live in their shadows. But you're used to it, right? Always the little helper, never the star. Madison's eyes narrowed, her smile cruel. I bet you dream of being like them, don't you? But let's be real. You're just ordinary. No offense, of course. I said nothing, my gaze fixed on the table, my heart pounding. Their words were familiar, their cruelty a well-worn path, but tonight it felt heavier, sharper, as if the weight of the ball and the guard's rejection had stripped away my defenses. I wanted to scream, to tell them I didn't want their spotlight, that I was happy in my quiet life, but the words wouldn't come. They never did. Just as Vivian opened her mouth to continue, a woman in a gold gown approached, her face bright with excitement, her voice cutting through their mockery. Hey, aren't you the one who walked in with Ethan Blake? She asked, her eyes wide. Your pictures are everywhere. The table fell silent, the air shifting as if a storm had rolled in. Vivian, Claire, and Madison stared at me, their mouths slightly open, their eyes wide with shock. They fumbled for their phones, scrolling frantically through social media. And there it was, photos of me, arm in arm with Ethan Blake, splashed across every major outlet. The captions screamed speculation. Who is Ethan Blake's mystery woman? Billionaire CEO's surprise companion at gala. Is this the first daughter of the Edwards family? My heart sank, a cold dread pooling in my stomach. This was bad. Worse than I'd feared. The whispers I'd heard at the entrance were nothing compared to this. The entire world was watching now, and my family would be furious. The woman in the gold gown leaned closer. I recognized her as one of the young business minds who was honored. Oblivious to the tension, she asked, So, are you two friends? I mean, he never shows up with anyone. And he walked in with you. I shook my head, panic rising in my chest. There's nothing between us, I said quickly, my voice trembling. He doesn't even know me. He just helped me get in because I didn't have an invitation. I needed them to believe me, to stop the rumors before they spread further. If this reached my sisters, they'd lose their minds. Worse, it could jeopardize my job at Bexley Group, the one place where I felt I belonged, the one sanctuary I'd carved out in a world that didn't see me. That job was more than a paycheck. It was a haven, a place that seemed designed for me in ways I couldn't explain. From my very first day, everything at Bexley had felt perfect. The cafeteria added my favorite dishes, grilled salmon with lemon herb sauce, fresh berry tarts. On the second day, I started working there. I had heard some employees expressing how shocked they were to see the sudden menu additions, foods I'd never mentioned to anyone. I was given a soundproof corner office, cozy and private, decorated with soft blues and whites, exactly my taste. My projects were praised, but I was never forced to present them publicly, sparing me the spotlight I dreaded. Promotions came quietly, without fanfare, and my colleagues respected my need for privacy, never pushing me to socialize or perform. I'd wondered about it sometimes. How could a company be so perfectly suited to me? Things changed too quickly, too precisely in my favor. Now, with Mr. Blake's name tied to mine, I feared it could all unravel. If my family's lies spread, if the media painted me as a schemer, I could lose the one place where I felt safe, where I felt seen. Before I could say more, I saw them, Sophia, Lillian, and Grace, storming toward us, their faces composed for the public, but their eyes blazing with fury. They grabbed my arm, their manicured nails digging into my skin, and yanked me away from the table, moving swiftly toward a secluded hallway near the ballroom's edge. My parents followed, their steps measured but their expressions cold as stone. A united front of disapproval. The hallway was dim, the sounds of the ball muffled by heavy velvet curtains. The moment we were alone, my mother's hand cracked across my cheek, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the quiet space. The sting was sharp, but the betrayal cut deeper, slicing through years of buried pain. I gasped, my hand flying to my face, my eyes filling with tears I fought to hold back. "This night was supposed to be about your sisters," Margaret hissed, her voice low but venomous, her face inches from mine. "They were supposed to shine, to be celebrated. But you couldn't let them have this, could you? You had to ruin it with your jealousy." I stood frozen, my cheek burning, my mind reeling. "I didn't do anything," I whispered, my voice trembling, barely audible. "He just helped me get in." "The tabloids are exploding," she spat, stepping closer, her eyes blazing with rage. "They're calling you the mysterious first daughter of the Edwards family seen with billionaire Ethan Blake. Instead of headlines about Sophia, Lillian, and Grace, the daughters who earned this, you're stealing their moment with your pathetic stunt." My father crossed his arms, his voice ice cold, his gaze piercing. "Do you have any idea what this does to our reputation? Your sisters worked for this moment, built their careers through talent and dedication. And you're stealing their light by throwing yourself at a man like Ethan Blake." Sophia stepped forward, her voice dripping with malice, her emerald gown shimmering under the dim light. "She did it on purpose, Mother. I heard she caused a scene at the entrance, acting like a damsel in distress to get his pity. She's been planning this, using her job at Bexley to get close to him. She's always been jealous of us." Lillian's laugh was sharp, cutting through the air like glass. "Can you imagine? Ethan Blake, the most eligible bachelor in the country, taking pity on her? He must be horrified to be linked with someone so insignificant." Grace smirked, her eyes raking over me, her silver heels clicking as she stepped closer. "She's always been jealous of us, Mother." This was her pathetic attempt to steal our moment. She probably thought she could finally be somebody by clinging to a man like him. Their accusations piled on, each one heavier, each one a stone pressing down on my chest. They claimed I'd schemed, manipulated Ethan, used my job at Bexley to trap him in some desperate bid for attention. Then came the final blow. They demanded I go to the media and confess that I'd orchestrated the entire scene out of jealousy, that I'd used my position at Bexley to gain Ethan's sympathy, that I'd deliberately tried to ruin my sister's night. They wanted me to stand before the cameras and admit I was a scheming, envious sister who dared to reach for a man I could never have. That confession would destroy me. My reputation, my career, my quiet life at Bexley, gone in an instant. I'd be branded a liar, a manipulator, a nobody who'd overreached and fallen. I'd lose my job, my sanctuary, the one place where I'd found peace. I begged, my voice breaking, something I hadn't done since I was a child, when I'd realized begging for their love was futile. "Please don't make me do this. I didn't plan anything. I swear." My mother's eyes were hard, her lips a thin line, her face a mask of contempt. "You've embarrassed us enough, Emily. You'll do as we say, or you'll regret it. We've given you everything, a home, an education, a place in this family, and this is how you repay us." My father's voice was colder still, his words measured but final. "Don't make a scene here. We'll deal with you at home. But you will make that statement, or you'll find yourself without a family." Sophia leaned closer, her voice a whisper meant to wound, her breath warm against my ear. "You'll never be one of us, Emily. You're nothing. And after tonight, everyone will know it." I stood there, my cheeks stinging, my heart shattering into pieces I wasn't sure I could ever reassemble. I'd spent years enduring their cruelty, swallowing their insults, believing I deserved it because I wasn't like them, because I wasn't enough. But this was a new low. They want me to jeopardize the only thing that keeps me going. The thought of losing that job is crumbling. We returned to the ballroom, my steps heavy, my eyes blank, my body moving on autopilot. I felt like a ghost, drifting through a world that didn't see me, a lost soul in a sea of glitter and power. The whispers had spread like wildfire, fueled by Vivian, Claire and Madison, who'd wasted no time planting their poison among the guests. As I entered, eyes turned to me, sharp and accusing, their gazes stripping away what little dignity I had left. "Isn't she also an Edwards?" An aristocratic woman snapped, her voice loud enough to carry across the room, her diamond tiara glinting under the chandeliers. "Your sisters came here to be honored, yet you came to showcase your seduction skills? Using a man to shine." Another woman, her sapphire gown shimmering, joined in, her tone bitter. Shameless. She knew being seen with Ethan Blake, who's never been linked with any woman, would get her name on the front page. A calculated move, if you ask me. The accusations grew louder, the laughter sharper, each word a dagger in my heart. They asked what I did for a living, then mocked me when I mumbled that I worked at Bexley Group. A corporate drone. One sneered, her lips curling. She must have thrown herself at him at work, using her position to get close. How pathetic. They called me desperate, manipulative, a nobody who'd never stand a chance with a man like Ethan Blake. They said I'd lose my job for staining his name, that I'd humiliated myself and my family in front of the nation's elite. "She's not even pretty," a woman whispered, loud enough for me to hear, her voice dripping with scorn. What could he possibly see in her? My parents stood by, their faces a perfect act of disappointment, their eyes gleaming with satisfaction as the crowd tore me apart. My sisters whispered among themselves, their smiles tight, their voices low but vicious. "She's always been like this," Sophia said loudly enough for others to hear, her tone dripping with pity. "Trying to take what's ours. It's sad, really." Inside, I was breaking, my chest so tight I could barely breathe, my throat burning with unshed tears. I was alone, as I'd always been, surrounded by people who loathed me, who saw me as nothing. I wanted to run, to disappear, to erase myself from this glittering hell where I'd never belonged. But I stood there, my head bowed, my hands trembling, waiting for the moment they'd force me to confess my supposed sins to the journalists waiting outside. My mother stepped forward, her voice smooth and calculated, her smile a mask of maternal concern. "Please, don't speak to my daughter that way," she said, her tone calm but laced with venom. "She may be different from our other children, but we love her all the same." She paused, her eyes flicking to me, cold and commanding. "She's here to make a statement, to clear everything up. We were just headed to the journalists outside." The crowd murmured, some nodding in approval, others demanding to witness my humiliation. Permission was granted for a group of journalists to be brought into the ballroom, their cameras and microphones ready to capture my downfall. I stood there, surrounded by gossiping women, my thoughts drowning in pain. I felt like a lamb led to slaughter, my family the shepherds guiding me to my ruin. The journalists filed in, their eyes hungry, their questions already forming. "What did you do to manipulate Ethan Blake? Why did you try to ruin your sister's night? How does it feel to be the black sheep of the Edwards family?" Then, suddenly, the noise fell silent. It wasn't just tension. It was him, Ethan Blake, striding across the ballroom, his presence like a storm rolling in, dark and unstoppable. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, heads turned, the crowd parted like the sea. Women adjusted their gowns, flashing desperate smiles, their voices turning sugary as they vied for his attention. My mother practically threw herself in his path, gushing about her daughters, praising Sophia's films, Lillian's runways, Grace's designs, her voice a syrupy blend of flattery and ambition. My sisters stood nearby, radiant and poised, their smiles calculated, as if this were their moment to shine brighter still, to claim Mr. Blake's favor and cement their status. I shrank back, guilt and dread twisting in my gut. This was Ethan Blake, my boss, the man whose name they accused me of staining. He'd hear their lies, believe their accusations. He'd fire me, and I'd lose everything, my job, my sanctuary, my quiet life at Bexley. I wanted to run, to bolt from the room, but my feet were rooted to the floor, my heart pounding in my ears. I braced myself for his anger, his dismissal, the moment he'd confirm what my family had always said, that I was nothing. To my horror, Mr. Blake walked past everyone, past my mother's fawning, past my sister's radiant smiles, past the sea of perfumed women, and straight toward me. His eyes, those stormy blue eyes, locked onto mine, steady and warm, a beacon in the chaos. The room seemed to hold its breath, the air crackling with disbelief. "Emily," he said, calling my name so casually, like we were old friends, his voice clear and resonant, cutting through the silence like a blade. "I've been waiting to talk to you all night. You look beautiful. The most beautiful woman here." The room froze. Gasps echoed, sharp and disbelieving. My sisters' faces twisted in shock, their eyes narrowing with rage, their hands clenching into fists. Vivian, Claire, and Madison stood frozen, their mouths open, their earlier cruelty replaced by stunned silence. My parents stood stunned, their expressions a mix of confusion and fury, their perfect facade crumbling. I felt the world tilt, my breath catching in my chest. Did he just say that? To me, plain, insignificant Emily Edwards? In front of thousands of New York's elite? He was mistaken. He had to be. I glanced around, expecting to see someone else behind me, a woman worthy of his praise. But there was no one. Just me, standing alone, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might burst. My mother rushed forward, her eyes wide, her smile forced, desperation seeping into her voice. "Mr. Blake, we are terribly sorry for the rumors about you and my daughter," she said, her tone dripping with fake concern. "It was a misunderstanding, a mistake on her part, and she's ready to clarify everything to the media. She means no harm." Ethan turned his head slowly, his eyes narrowing, meeting hers with a look that was both calm and unnerving, a flicker of disdain in his gaze. "Why would you be sorry, madam?" he interrupted, his voice dangerously low, his smile sharp. "It was an honor to walk in here with her. I don't mind. I actually came to apologize to Emily for any inconveniences it must have cost her. I was waiting for a private moment to talk to her. She doesn't like the spotlight, but since you all have already put her in one, I might as well take advantage of it," he says. The whispers exploded, a storm of shock and intrigue crashing through the ballroom. I was just as shocked. Why would he apologize to me? I just wanted to disappear from here. My body was shaking. I was completely confused. My mother's smile faltered, her composure cracking, her hands twitching as if she wanted to grab control of the situation but couldn't. Sophia forced a laugh, stepping forward, her voice smooth but laced with venom. "Actually, no one should be surprised that Mr. Blake treats my sister so kindly," she said, her emerald eyes gleaming. "He's her employer, after all. She's always been sweet, innocent. She has this charm that draws pity." Her words were a knife, implying I'd used my supposed innocence to manipulate Ethan, to play a calculated game for attention and sympathy. The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, their eyes flicking to me with renewed suspicion. Ethan didn't even glance at her, his focus unwavering, his presence a shield against their venom. "Well," he said, his tone coolly dismissive, "you're not wrong. Emily is indeed sweet and innocent, but you're not right either." He turned to me, his eyes locking with mine, steady and sure. "I've known Emily for years, Emily," he said, his voice firm. I had no idea what he was implying. We have never interacted before. Did he see how people were treating me, and is he trying to help? "I knew you long before you ever worked at my company," he says. My heart stopped. My breath caught, my lips parting in disbelief. I stared at him, my mind racing, searching for any connection. What was he talking about? How could he know me? I was nobody, a shadow even among Bexley's employees. Yet his eyes held a certainty, a depth that made my chest ache, as if he saw not just me but the girl I'd hidden, the one who'd buried under years of silence and pain. "That's right," he continued, his voice raw yet commanding, holding the attention of the entire room. "The first time I saw her was at her university, during a mentorship program for Bexley Group's Innovation Initiative. My team was scouting talent among the graduating class, but the person who impressed us most wasn't a final-year student. It was a first-year girl, shy and quiet, whose urban planning project, a sustainable city blueprint, was so masterful it outshone everything else, including the work of my top planners at Bexley. Gasps rippled through the room, a wave of astonishment that seemed to shake the chandeliers. I blinked, my heart pounding, memories flickering at the edges of my mind. I remembered that project, a sustainable city design I'd worked on for a class personal project, sketching late into the night in my cramped dorm room, dreaming of a world where cities could be both efficient and humane, where every citizen had a place. My professor, Dr. Harris, had praised it, called it revolutionary, and insisted on submitting it to a company for review. I wasn't interested. I was just a first-year student with so much going on. I didn't want the hassle of presentations and unnecessary attention, so I'd asked to stay anonymous, letting him take the credit for presenting it. I'd never known it had reached Bexley. Or Ethan. Right then and there, he said, his eyes never leaving mine, his voice softening with a reverence that made my throat tighten. I knew I had to find a way to bring you into our company. And I did. You've been the best decision I ever made for Bexley. You are the most brilliant asset we have. We as a company are benefiting a lot from you, he says with so much sincerity. I was in a trance. The silence was deafening, the kind that carries weight, pressing down on the room like a storm about to break. Jaws dropped, eyes widened, the music fading into a distant hum. My family's faces were pale, their eyes burning with rage and humiliation, their carefully crafted narrative crumbling before their eyes. The women who'd mocked me stepped back, their expressions a mix of shock and envy, their earlier cruelty exposed as petty and hollow. I stood frozen, my mind reeling, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. He knows me? All this time, I'd thought he didn't even know my name, that I was just another employee lost in the machinery of Bexley. All this while, journalists were taking pictures with urgency, the flashes blinding. A journalist pushed through the crowd, his voice sharp and eager, his microphone thrust forward. Mr. Blake, among all these brilliant women being honored tonight, including 3 from the Edwards family, which woman has impressed you the most? The question was a trap, a deliberate attempt to redirect the spotlight to my sisters, to elevate the Edwards name and restore their dominance. I am sure my parents have something to do with it. Sophia's eyes lit up, her smile returning, her posture straightening. Lillian smoothed her gown, her confidence swelling, while Grace smirked, ready to bask in the praise. My mother's gaze gleamed with triumph, certain their moment had come, the night theirs to reclaim. Mr. Blake chuckled softly, a sound that was both warm and teasing, letting the moment stretch, the anticipation until it was almost unbearable. Well, he said, his voice measured, I must say the Edwards family is generally impressive. Their daughters have achieved remarkable things. The room fell silent. Every breath held, my sisters' faces radiant with pride, their smiles wide as they prepared to step forward. My mother's hands clasped tightly, her eyes gleaming with victory. And, Mr. Blake added, his tone shifting, a playful edge in his voice, my honorary woman, of this year, of the past 5 years, and I believe for many more years to come, also comes from this family. Their smiles widened, Sophia's hand brushing her hair, Lillian's poise perfect, Grace's eyes sparkling with anticipation. But, he said, his voice dropping to a tone that was both gentle and commanding, she is not one of tonight's women. In fact, she lives such a simple life. I believe she prefers it that way, he says, looking directly at me. I froze, my heart pounding to its fullest capacity. The smiles fell, replaced by stunned silence, then fury. Sophia's eyes narrowed, her hands clenching into fists. Lillian's lips parted, her face paling, while Grace's smirk vanished, her gaze turning to me with a venom that could have poisoned the air. My mother's jaw dropped, her hands trembling, while my father's face darkened, his eyes boring into me like a judge passing sentence. Everyone knows it is I he speaks of. There are only 4 Edwards daughters, and 3 were being honored tonight. That left one, the one standing beside Mr. Blake, the one they'd all dismissed. Me, Emily Edwards. Cameras surged forward, their flashes exploding like fireworks, lighting up my face in a blaze of blinding light. I froze, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst, my hands trembling at my sides. I wanted to run, to hide, to escape the scrutiny of 1,000 eyes, but Ethan's presence grounded me, his gaze a steady anchor in the storm, a quiet understanding passing between us. At least I wasn't being insulted and mocked loudly ever since he came. People were just glaring and whispering. He was like a refuge to me now. Another journalist scrambled forward, her voice sharp and eager. "Sir, we understand you're referring to Miss Emily Edwards, the first daughter of the Edwards family," she said, pushing past her colleagues. "We saw you walk in together earlier, and we've confirmed she works at your company. But this event honors women who've made visible contributions to society. We can't find anything she's done. Isn't she just a low-level employee at Bexley, of no real significance?" The words hung heavy, a deliberate jab meant to diminish me, to strip away Ethan's praise and restore my sister's spotlights. Gasps fluttered through the crowd, a ripple of agreement from those who'd mocked me earlier. My father's lips twitched, a faint smirk of approval, while my mother's eyes gleamed, her composure returning. I felt the weight of their words, the familiar shame rising in my chest, threatening to drown me. Ethan's expression darkened, his jaw clenched, his eyes blazing with a fire that could freeze the room. He turned to the journalist, his gaze piercing, his voice cold and cutting. "Low level," he repeated, his tone laced with contempt. "You dare call Emily, of all people, a low-level employee? She is the heart of Bexley Group, the most significant force behind our success for the past 5 years." The room stilled, every breath held, every eye locked on him. For all I know, all the projects I have worked on are always presented as teamwork the way I want it, because I am more of a behind-the-scenes kind of employee. I'm not practical in the fields like the rest. I just oversee, manage, and draw plans from the confines of my office. The team members and other employees are the ones who help to bring my visions to life. Ethan is barely ever at the company. He is always traveling all over the world. They have branches in so many places, and he himself is more of a hands-on field guy. He is always going out to sites. That is part of the reason why we have never interacted directly. We are complete opposites. Ethan stepped forward, his presence commanding, his voice deepening with pride and power. "Emily is the most talented woman I've ever met," he continued, his words landing with the force of a gavel. "And since she's never claimed credit for her work, allow me to set the record straight." He paused, his eyes sweeping the room, daring anyone to challenge him. "She is the mind behind the BexNet Urban Planning Project, a sustainable smart city system that has redefined modern living across 4 continents, saving millions from urban decay and environmental collapse." Murmurs began, a ripple of awe spreading through the crowd, heads turning to look at me with wide eyes. "She spearheaded the Heal Core initiative," he continued, his voice steady and raw, "a global healthcare logistics system that revolutionized emergency medicine delivery, ensuring life-saving treatments reached over 75 countries, from rural clinics to war-torn regions." Gasps grew louder, the room filled with whispers of disbelief giving way to respect. "And she led the Bex Harvest digital food chain," he said, his voice rising, passion underscoring every word, "a system that minimized global food waste, streamlined agricultural supply chains, and created jobs for over 600,000 people, transforming communities and economies worldwide." The room was stunned now, jaws dropped, eyes wide, the earlier mockery replaced by a palpable reverence. My mother's face was pale, her hands trembling, her lips pressed into a tight line. My father's eyes burned with a mix of rage and humiliation, his hands clenched at his sides. Sophia, Lillian, and Grace stood frozen, their faces contorted in disbelief, tears of envy glistening in their eyes. Vivian, Claire, and Madison stepped back, their earlier cruelty exposed as petty and hollow, their faces flushed with embarrassment. "She did all this," Ethan said, his voice softening, his eyes returning to me, "while staying in the shadows, never asking for recognition, never seeking the spotlight. She always said the work mattered more than the glory. That's who she is, the most brilliant, selfless, extraordinary woman I've ever known. The silence was profound, broken only by the faint hum of the chandeliers above, their light casting a golden glow over the stunned crowd. Even the most boastful socialites were speechless, their earlier disdain replaced by awe and respect. The journalists stood frozen, their cameras still flashing but their questions silenced, their narrative shattered by Ethan's words. I stood there, dazed, my mind spinning. It all made sense now. The library job that appeared when I was drowning in college bills, the free VIP hostel that materialized when I had nowhere to live, the Bexley job offer that came before I'd even graduated, the cozy apartment in a quiet neighborhood, the tailored work environment that felt like home. It wasn't luck, not a series of happy accidents. It was him, Ethan Blake, my silent guardian, watching over me, shaping my world from the shadows. I remembered those years, the struggles that had nearly broken me. College had been a battle. My scholarship covered tuition, but not books, not rent, not food. My family had refused to help, saying I could ask for anything, but they didn't make it easy. I had to ask for assistance, yet my sisters received monthly allowances, designer clothes, luxury vacations, and more. When the library job appeared, a high-paying position with flexible hours, I'd thought it was a miracle. When the hostel came, free and luxurious, I'd cried with relief. Then Bexley's offer arrived, a dream job with a salary I'd never dared hope for. I never knew it was Ethan, every step of the way, clearing my path, giving me the space to shine without ever asking for credit. I stared at him like what he truly is to me, my light in a darkened world. I cannot even imagine what my life would have been like without his background pushes and help. Emily, I know this is overwhelming, Ethan said gently, his voice pulling me back to the moment, his eyes searching mine. And knowing you as I do, I'm sure all you want right now is to go home, to escape this chaos. Since we walked in together, would you do me the honor of letting me accompany you out of here as well? He held out his hand, his gaze steady, a gentleman's offer that felt like a lifeline. I looked around, at the buzzing crowd, the cameras flashing, the shocked faces of the women who'd mocked me, the pale, furious faces of my family who'd never cared. I saw Vivian, Claire, and Madison, their eyes wide with disbelief, their earlier cruelty a mockery of their own now. I saw my sisters, Sophia's tears of rage, Lillian's clenched jaw, Grace's trembling hands, knowing their spotlight was gone forever. I saw my parents, their empire crumbling, their eyes hollow with the realization that they'd lost control of me, of their narrative. Then I looked at Ethan's hand, strong and steady, offering not just an escape but a new beginning, a chance to be seen, to be appreciated in my own right, a reminder that I am not useless. My own hand, trembling, reached for his. He took it gently, his touch warm and reassuring. He tucked my hand into his arm, and together we strode out, the crowd parting in stunned silence, their eyes following us like stars trailing a comet. Flashbulbs exploded outside, journalists shouting questions, their voices a chaotic blur. Ethan's security team held them back, creating a path to his luxury black car, its sleek lines gleaming under the hotel's lights. He opened the door for me, his smile warm and princely, helping me in with a care that made me feel like royalty. He climbed in beside me, and the car pulled away, the city lights blurring past, a kaleidoscope of color and possibility. I was quiet all the way through. I didn't say anything. He didn't either, which I appreciated. I was just too overwhelmed to even think at that point. His driver drove me directly to my apartment. I hadn't even been asked for directions. Then he came down and opened the door for me. Before getting out, I garnered some courage to show my gratitude. It's the right thing to do. If it wasn't for him, this would have been the worst night of my life. I would have lost everything, especially myself. I turned to him. "Thank you, sir, so much," I said, my voice cracking. He smiled. "I call you Emily and you will call me Ethan," he says. I slowly nodded. "And I should be the one thanking you. considering how much of an asset you are to our company. It's about time I grant you more justice. We should get to know each other more and work more closely. We don't have to keep using intermediaries. What do you say we become friends? He smiled warmly, pushing his hand out for a shake. I stared at it and nodded, slowly joining mine with his for a firm handshake. The next morning, the world had changed. My phone buzzed relentlessly, a flood of notifications from every corner of the globe, news alerts, social media tags, messages from colleagues, strangers, even old classmates I hadn't spoken to in years. Headlines screamed across every screen and paper. The first daughter. Meet Emily Edwards, the brilliant mind behind Bexley's global triumphs. Unknown no more. Emily Edwards, Ethan Blake's silent muse and Bexley's brightest star. Brains, beauty, and humility. From shadow to spotlight, the unforgettable story of Emily Edwards. My face was plastered across millions of screens. Interviews poured in from my past, middle school teachers who remembered my quiet determination, my science projects that won county fairs, high school classmates who'd barely noticed me but now shared stories of my kindness, how I tutored them without seeking praise, university professors who lauded my academic brilliance, my urban planning thesis that had sparked a movement in sustainable design. My academic record was dissected, top of my class at every level from elementary school to university, with honors in science, environmental studies, and urban planning. My scholarship to college, earned through sleepless nights and relentless effort, was celebrated as a triumph of grit over privilege. The ball, meant to be the crowning moment for Sophia, Lillian, and Grace, had become my story. The Edwards sisters, the actress, the model, the designer, were reduced to afterthoughts, their awards forgotten in the wake of billionaire Ethan Blake's revelation. The media spotlighted their silence, their absence from interviews, their refusal to comment on their sister's sudden fame. Speculation swirled. My mother had called last night, but I ended the call seconds later because of the loud curses and insults she was spitting at me with my sisters screaming in the background. I have blocked all of them, and I ignore all their messages. They don't know my address because they never care to find out. Otherwise, I'm sure they would be bursting through those doors by now. As I sat in my apartment, the morning light streaming through my window, my laptop glowing with articles, my phone rang, cutting through the silence. It was Ethan. He gave me his private phone number that day. He already had mine, though he hadn't ever used it till now, it seems. I answered, my voice soft, hesitant. "Hello." "Emily," he said, his voice warm and steady, a beacon in the storm of my new reality. "Good morning. I hope you got enough rest last night." "Good morning. I did. Thank you. I just called to check up on you and invite you for dinner. There is no room for rejection, so is tonight fine by you? It's a Sunday. I hope you don't have plans." I smiled, a smile spreading through my soul. "It's fine," I whispered, my voice steady. He promised to pick me up later. As I hung up, I walked to my window, looking out at the city. The skyline stretched before me, vast and shimmering, a canvas of dreams and possibilities. I wasn't the shadow anymore. My parents and sisters had tried to embarrass me, ridicule me, dim my light, but I outshone them. I even took over their own light and brightened mine even more. I am Emily Edwards. I will live for myself from now on. I will embrace the glory of my hard work. I will build my confidence and create a world for myself. Next time, I will not need Ethan or anyone else to speak for me. I'm going to be so strong that no one ever walks all over me again.